Advance and be recognized, everyone, and welcome back to the Sitrep podcast channel, your forward operations base for all things military and historical wargaming. I am your host, Risky Jim, and today's content is a little off the cuff, a little unscheduled, kind of unscripted, more of an announcement really for some great content that we have coming up later this weekend. As most of our audience will know, today marks the 80th anniversary of Operation Market Garden, a rather ambitious, some would say somewhat reckless plan to end World War II in Europe by the end of 1944. What we're announcing is a live stream war game of Avalon Hill's classic Panzer Leader, recreating part of the Battle of Nijmegen, itself part of the larger campaign of Operation Market Garden. We've got the scenario all built and ready to go, we've got some players lined up, and we're scheduled to feature this for you guys live here on the Sitrep podcast, 2 p.m. Eastern U.S. Standard Time, or 7 p.m. Greenwich Time, on Sunday, September 22nd. A quick note, Part 2 of our Desert Storm wargame is still coming out. It's just going to be delayed slightly while we take a quick pause to commemorate the 80th anniversary of Operation Market Garden. In concept, the plan for Operation Market Garden was actually quite simple. After the landings at Normandy and the advance across France, Allied intelligence thought they had found a side door into Germany, so to speak, through the Netherlands. This was a sector relatively weakly held, so they thought, and they hoped that a quick push through here could open up an early invasion route across the River Rhine and into Germany. In particular, the Allies had their eye on the Ruhr area. This is a big industrial region in the northwest of Germany, so not only, if this plan was successful, would it get Allied boots into Germany months early, but also put a bit of a chokehold on the Germans in terms of their economy and war production. The only problem was, this was the Netherlands, a country with a lot of water in terms of swampy areas, canals, and rivers. So the general idea was to drop a series of airborne landings early to grab all of the key bridges the Allies would need along their route of advance. Simultaneously, a massive ground blitz would push up this route of advance, crossing all these bridges until they got to Arnhem, where they would be across the River Rhine and effectively into Germany. Well, we've all seen the movie or read the fantastic book by Cornelius Ryan. This plan just didn't work out. It had way too many moving parts. Every single step of this overly complicated plan had to unfold in just the right order, in just the right way, and at just the right time. Flip through any military history book worthy of the name, and I dare you to count up how many times that's ever happened. In wargaming terms, always remember, your opponent gets a turn too. So let me just take a few minutes and show you what I've got set up so far for Sunday's game. Okay, so again, we are doing part of the Battle of Nijmegen, in turn part of Operation Market Garden. Specifically, we are looking at part of the engagements that take place on 19 September 1944. This is actually a day before the famous scene in the movie A Bridge Too Far, where Robert Redford has to take 3rd Battalion of the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment in their pathetic little boats across the Vaal River. We're doing some of the action that took place right before that. We've done the Vaal River crossing before in Valor and Victory. Check that out in our channel history if you're interested in checking that out. I should also note that this painting is done by the great war artist James Dietz. It shows troops of the 82nd Airborne at Nijmegen having crossed the Vaal River, and they're getting ready to attack one of the 2 bridges the Germans held across that river the Allies desperately needed to begin their last leg of their advance toward Arnhem. Speaking of the bigger situation, here we have some background material for the Battle of Nijmegen. This is the final objective that the Allies are going for, the town of Arnhem. You can see here where it sort of lays astride the Rhine River. Germany is just over this way a little bit. In fact, I think this is the German border right here. So this is the ultimate objective that everyone's trying to go for. But in order to do that, what's going to have to happen is the Allies are going to have to take a lot other objectives, or many other objectives, in order to make that happen. Way down here is their start line. We have, as we see here, where the 101st Airborne has landed at places like Eindhoven, Vagel, and Son. Their job is to take all these bridges in order to clear a path for the British 30 Corps to sort of push up this road. It shows you here where their line of advance was. That's all fine. Then they have to go down this highway. They called it Hell's Highway because it was a terrible piece of highway to try to push 3 divisions of British tanks and mechanized infantry down. And then they get into the 82nd's area of advance. We see here mostly around the town of Nijmegen, although there's a bunch of other bridges they have to take as well. The Grave Bridge has to be taken, multiple bridges over many different canals toward the Maas River, and other rivers have to be taken here. And then of course across the Waal River itself. Here we see the Waal River, where Nijmegen kind of clings to its southern bank. And here is where the 82nd Airborne runs into a lot of problems. On the first day, they did make a belated attempt to take it with just 2 companies, which is kind of crazy. It would eventually take the better part of a full reinforced regiment to clear Nijmegen and then get across the 2 bridges. There's a railroad bridge and a highway bridge. The Allies do want both of them. And you'll also notice that the division commander, that's Major General James Gavin, by the way, is facing a lot of problems on his right flank. There's all this high ground and these woods here where there are plenty of German units getting ready to threaten his right wing. Making matters even worse, the Germans, who are still holding way too much key terrain up here around the British bridgehead here at Arnhem, have now been well informed on what the Allies are up to. They're getting plenty of ad hoc battle groups drawn from 9th and 10th SS Panzer Divisions down here to threaten Nijmegen and reinforce their positions around Nijmegen, despite the fact that Lieutenant Colonel John Frost still holds at least half of the key bridge over Arnhem. The Germans are still managing to get reinforcements down to Nijmegen around the British position down here further south. We're going to see some of those battle groups in today's game. Over here to the right, we see some blow-ups of the Nijmegen battle area. Again, we're seeing where there are plenty of German battle groups set up here to defend not only Nijmegen, but also fronting these 2 bridges the Allies want. Down here, we see some clearer positions of the 3 specific battle groups in question that we're going to see in today's game. The strongest one of those is Kampfgruppe Uhling, as we see. That's mostly drawn from 9th SS Panzer Division, although there's some units from the 10th in there as well. Mielitz and Henke were mostly flak units, along with some units that were in training and some units that were like security guards and police units and things like that. But they're still pretty formidable, because when it comes to digging anybody, I don't care if it's your grandma with a broom, it's pretty tough to dig determined infantry out of these heavily fortified buildings that we see here in the city of Nijmegen. This map here was particularly useful. This is where we see like down to the jump off times and specific companies of which battalion and which regiment that the 82nd was throwing in here, and we see like where the actual buildings were, where the Germans had their individual guns set up. We see a couple of 5cm anti-tank guns. We see an 88mm here in this little roundabout. There's more German positions here. So we see where everything is. Here's another 88 position we have to watch out for. So we've got some pretty good ideas on how things were actually set up. Again, this is not the scene that we see in A Bridge Too Far with Robert Redford. That takes place the day after the battle that we're looking at here, and that's going to take place further up this direction. Again, we've done that battle in Valor and Victory if you're interested in checking it out a couple of years ago, but for now we're doing some of the other fighting that took place further to the south and east that helped set up that battle the next day. Okay, and here is our Panzer Leader map for the game. We've got Nijmegen laid out. We're using a scale of 150 meters per hex. I know that's a change from the normal Panzer Leader scale. I've gone over in a whole bunch of other videos why I do that. But we have our 5 objective points. I'm not sure what this is, but multiple maps show a very large building here, and we also see where the Allies had a hell of a time, particularly the Americans, had a hell of a time trying to get through that position. So I've marked it on the map as an objective. I looked at current maps of Nijmegen. I can't identify what that's supposed to be, but that does appear on various contemporary maps, just a large building right there by those railroad tracks. I guess it's the railroad station that the Allies had a tough time getting through. It's probably the railroad station. I just don't know that for 100% sure. We have some other key landmarks that the Germans used to set up their position. Notice they set up a lot of positions at these roundabouts. Now this makes sense for a couple of different reasons. Number one, they obviously control multiple major streets with elongated lines of sight through the interior of Nijmegen. Nijmegen does not offer, it's a very densely packed, like old school European city. There's not a lot of lines of sight across these little streets, but where you're going to get any kind of line of sight is down these long roads. So the Germans set up some of their anti-tank artillery here. It's very, very effective. In particular, the Grenadier Guards lose at least a full troop of Shermans just trying to get across this roundabout here. That's in the history books. We're going to see if that actually happens as well in our game. But as usual, I have set up 5 objective points. The Allies have to get at least 3 of them. If they get 4 of them, it's a tactical victory. Here's the former Volkov fortress. That's going to be the 4th objective point. The Allies have to get at least 3 of them to match the historical results of the battle, thus giving them a marginal victory. If they get 4, i.e. if they get the Volkov fortress, that's going to be a tactical victory. And who knows, our players might get lucky. They may force the highway bridge early. Who knows? And they may actually get across the river and secure a lodgment on the other side. If they can do that, the historical context will be the bloodbath that we see with the Robert Redford offensive the next afternoon on 20 September 1944 won't even be required. That's kind of unlikely. I've been playing Panzer Leader for 30, 40 years. And honestly, I think I can count the number of decisive victories on the fingers of both hands. It doesn't happen often, but I always leave the possibility open on the maps and in the scenario design, just in case. Okay, here underneath the map, we're looking at some of the units that are going to be included in this game. We're starting off with 2nd Battalion of the Grenadier Guards, part of the Guards Armor Division. They were definitely part of the battle at Nijmegen here. Everyone knows about the Irish Guards. That is the unit led by Michael Caine in the movie. That is actually further off to the northwest. They're going to be the guys supporting 3rd Battalion of the 504th, the Robert Redford character. But here in the actual guts of Nijmegen, we're looking at a different battalion. It's the 2nd Battalion of the Grenadier Guards. Notice I'm giving the British player 2 options on how he wants to set up his tanks. This is the historical option, if he wants to go this way. So how the British would organize their tanks, they didn't build their tanks in 5 tank platoons, they built their tanks in 4 tank troops. And in that 4 tanks, they would have a mix of 3 of the normal 75mm gun armed versions, I call them vanilla Shermans, the M4A2s, that kind of thing, and then 1 of the new Fireflies. Now, all of those values get sort of averaged out. It takes into account the fact that there are only 4 tanks in a troop, and so you wind up with these rather unimpressive figures. But they're all rounded off. They all have the dual class asterisk after the A that you see there. So it's a solid, if somewhat unimpressive unit. Now, if the British player chooses, he can break out his Fireflies where they fight in their own independent troops. It's not strictly historically accurate, but I like giving the British player the option whenever I include these big Sherman units in the late war British outfits. So we see the lesser Shermans. These are a Sherman troop without a Firefly in them, so their values do go down. But for every 3 normal Sherman troops, they do get 1 kick-ass Sherman Firefly troop, I should say. They are ready to go. According to my sources, these battalions all had at least a couple troops of Stuarts along for, light tank work and reconnaissance. And this particular battle group did have a battalion of Guards motor rifle infantry with them, and again we have them here along with some machine guns, some 76mm mortar support, some 6-pounder May gun battery, and they were all running around in American-made half-tracks. These Bren carriers are to tow the light artillery with, and of course we have the command vehicle Hummer. Now notice that this is about 3/4 strength. These guys have been at the spearhead of this whole 30-corps advance up Hell's Highway. They had to break through the initial German line of advance. We remember that scene from the movie. Then they had to get through the 101st position at Eindhoven. They had to get through the 82nd position. Well, they're in the middle of 82nd position here at Nijmegen. So they've had a long way to go. We're now into day 3 of Operation Market Garden, and they've seen a fair amount of combat along the way. So in all, we're looking at about 3/4 strength for the 2nd Battalion Grenadier Guards battle group. Here are the two primary American units that are involved in this part of the Battle of Nijmegen. We're looking at 2nd Battalion of the 505th and 1st Battalion of the 508th. Parachute Infantry Regiments. They are both, of course, part of the 82nd Airborne Division. Now again, we're not including units like 3rd Battalion of the 504th. That's going to be the attack across the River Vaal. That is further to the northwest, and it takes place the next day, so we're not including them in today's game. We're also not including some of the other loose change companies that were involved with the 505th and the 508th in this part of the Battle of Nijmegen. I'm not trying to exclude anybody's grandfather or great-grandfather, but these are the two primary parent units, 2nd of the 505th, 1st of the 508th, that were involved in this particular part of the Battle of Nijmegen, 19 September 1944. The Americans look pretty weak, and they actually are pretty weak, because again, they are paratroopers. And as we all know, when you drop paratroopers behind enemy lines, they go in without any kind of artillery support, any kind of anti-tank support, logistical backup, engineering support, anything like that. It's just some guys jumping out of a plane, some elite light infantry with rifles and whatever else they can carry on their backs. So yeah, there's not a lot here. Now they are elite troops in nice big thick platoons, so they do get the enhanced defense value of 8. These are their standard values out of Panzer Leader. I didn't make these up, by the way. And they are armed to the teeth with Thompsons, BARs, 30 cals, there's maybe even some 60mm mortars in here. So yeah, these guys do get the enhanced value of 4. That's one of the highest attack values that you see in the standard Panzer Leader series. Also, because they're airborne troops, people who are familiar with Panzer Leader will know this, that as prescribed in all of the Para Leader expansions for the Panzer Leader series, any airborne unit that's fully assembled, and it definitely includes these guys, they've been on the ground for 3 days now, they do get the engineer bonus for launching close assault tactics or CAT attacks. So I basically have, 18 engineer units here. So those of you who are familiar with Panzer Leader know what a big deal this is. There's not a lot here. There's no vehicles, there's no artillery, there's no anti-tank support, there's nothing heavy in here. But when it comes to infantry, this force is a lot scarier than it looks. Moving over here to the Germans, we see the 3 basic Kampfgruppe that we had on our earlier maps. Again, we see how wildly imbalanced they are. There are technically 3 Kampfgruppe here, but Melitz and Henke are almost unworthy of the name. It's basically some anti-aircraft units and some military police. We do have some Fallschirmjäger here, but I've also mixed them up with some more security here in Kampfgruppe Henke. That's just because this, from what I read, was a training outfit. So some of these guys are really just teenagers going through boot camp. They're Fallschirmjägers, yeah, but they're not all like full-scale Fallschirmjägers. I did include a few just to kind of give the Germans a chance, but yeah, this unit isn't really as tough as it looks. The only real meat in the German defense is here with Kampfgruppe Uhling. These again are mostly drawn from 9th SS Panzer Division, but again, not all. So, the experts there can just kind of cool it in the comments. It's a mix of units from both of those divisions, along with some other local units they picked up along the way. I do have them, of course, in SS Black, as you can see here. And yeah, they're pretty powerful. We have some standard German infantry, we have some submachine guns, Pioneer combat engineers, some Panzer Shreks. I did make up those units because they're fun to bring in. We do have the 88mm. Now these are the Flak 56 values, not the Pak 43 values, so you'll notice that the 20 has been reduced to a 15. It's not quite as powerful as a weapon as the full-scale Pak 43, because again, these were mostly anti-aircraft units. I do see annotations on the map where there were several 5cm battery positions set up ready to go. I'm not sure about the 75, I just took a wild guess, and then put in some of the other units that you just see in practically every German unit. 20mm flak, we do know where there were some quad 20mm flaks, and specifically where they were. And I also have some of the almost ubiquitous 7.5cm infantry guns, because you almost can't put the Germans on the table without including at least some of those guns. And here I have the Germans set up in their defensive positions. Roughly speaking, I stress roughly, where they were historically. Specifically, we know where some of the 88s were on the maps I showed you earlier. Here's another one of the 88 batteries. We also know where some of the quad 2cm anti-aircraft guns were. I've got them set up in their historically accurate positions, or at least approximated here on our Panzer Leader map. Again, we're looking at Kampfgruppe Henke over here, mostly police and security guards, some training units. Same with Kampfgruppe Melitz over here, but again, the real firepower is over here with Kampfgruppe Uhling. This guy just arrived, I think the day before, with some units drawn further in the north from where the overall German commander was peeling them off of the fight against 1st British Airborne up there around Arnhem. We see where Arnhem is just 12 miles to the north. And yeah, these are the positions. I think the biggest advantage for the Germans is just going to be so many of them are in these concrete buildings. American paratroopers, British tanks with their dual-purpose guns, and British artillery and American mortars. We have a lot of reports of those. Also on those maps I showed you earlier, we have some of the actual battery positions, or specifically where the American mortars were set up. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of firepower. Nijmegen's real estate values are about to go down a couple pegs. Let's just go ahead and say that. But that's the only way we're going to get the Germans out of these concrete buildings here. Again, in our version of Panzer Leader, we do make a distinction between light buildings here that are colored like wood and concrete buildings that are colored gray like concrete. So there's basically heavy urban hexes and light urban hexes. Light urban hexes behave basically like woods, and concrete buildings get the full Arab-Israeli war rules for defense, +5 defense to all units that are in the hex. So the Americans and the British are going to have a lot of trouble dealing with that. They have a crushing superiority in firepower. All those Shermans have dual-purpose guns they do not have against soft targets. They do have some off-board artillery support. They have some onboard mortars. And again, all those American units get the engineer bonus for close assault tactics. There's going to be a fair amount of close assault tactics as the Americans go with point-blank fire, British tank support, room by room, house by house, street by street, here through the city of Nijmegen. So there you have it, folks. We really hope that you come out and join us for our 80th anniversary commemoration of Operation Market Garden. Again, that war game is scheduled to go live here on the Sitrep podcast at 2 p.m. East U.S. time, 7 p.m. Greenwich time on Sunday, September 22nd. For now, that's all we have for you today, folks. Thanks very much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. Please remember to hit that notification bell. Also, please consider joining the Sitrep Podcast Discord. There is an auto-accept invitation link to our Discord in the description of this video. Join our community, see what everybody's up to, and best of all, show us what's happening on your hobby table. This has been Risky Jim with the Sitrep Podcast. We are rounds complete for another episode, and as always, Tango Mike for watching.